I'm Eric Ford, the Area Vice President within Johnson & Johnson for DePuy Synthes, which is the orthopedic company of Johnson & Johnson. And my area is Baltimore and the Ohio Valley. I've been in this role for about a year and a half. I've been within J&J for 15 years. So very, very excited to hold my position. But more importantly, I'm excited around the impact that I've had over the 15 years, not necessarily solely based upon my contributions as a sales professional, but the folks that I've worked with, I've mentored, the folks that I look up to and have built a network with, the things that people have done and are continuing to do within that kind of site that I've been able to see has been phenomenal. And I look forward to adding to my network tonight as I get to know the folks in this room. And I'm very excited to next introduce our panelists. And I'll have them actually introduce themselves. And with the introduction, I want to actually throw a little curveball. So those of you who may know, on the side, I do love to smoke. Smoke meat, not anything else. I got a smoker, the Traeger, love that on the weekends. You can find me out there. But I also love music. So growing up, DJ'd, my dad had a jazz band, so I love music. So I'm gonna throw a little curveball. So talk to me about, obviously, who you are, your role in our organization, but then also your best professional year. What was the theme song playing in your head every single day? So Akila, we'll start with you.
Can everybody hear me? Hi, my name is Akila Daniels Vincent. I am currently at the QCITIs. We're within their spine division, supporting our digital technology organization. What is the favorite song? Okay, so my most challenging year or best year, which is one and the same, I have to say my song was Survivor. There was many times on this journey in digital technology. I've been in it for a long time, and now people care. But for a long time, they didn't, and I had to demonstrate my value to the organization in various ways. And I wanted to quit many times, and I had great mentors that told me to keep on going. And so I will say Survivor because I wanted to quit a long time ago. But it has really allowed me to progress in my career a lot because I decided to stay within my current role. So.
Love that. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Testing, you can hear me okay? All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lisa Houston. I'm a Region Business Director with Janssen Neuroscience. I've been with Johnson & Johnson this February 25 years. And throughout there, I've had a lot of twists and turns, but it's been an exciting career. I will say that what I do right now, and Michael Johnson, who's in the back of the room, we work together. We support patients and their providers, and the patients have schizophrenia, which is a very, very serious disease. It's actually a disabling disease. And we bring products to them, a long-acting injectable that makes a difference in these patients' lives to hopefully meet their goals and live independently and have a more stable life. So we're in a wonderful part of the organization. The most challenging year, oh my, that was even too much for me. My most challenging year, I always aspired to be a region business director at Johnson & Johnson. And I took over a team in another side of our business, cardiovascular and metabolism, up in the Northeast. I live outside of Boston, and they were last in the country forever before I ever walked through the door. And a lot of it, they just didn't believe in themselves. They did not believe that they could do better. The New England market is a highly corporatized, generic market. They are not industry friendly from a provider standpoint. And I stood up in front of that room and I said, we're going to be number one in the country. And they said, right. Not to my face, but they said, right. And within 12 months we were. And the song that kept going through our head and that the team actually all sang along and was our theme song was Don't Stop Believing by Journey.
Love that. So that's awesome. So I think what's important in these conversations, yes, we're going to have some great things to be some takeaways. You're going to be able to write notes and capture. But I think what's critically important is the mindset it takes to navigate the space that we're going to be talking about. So kind of getting into your mind through the song, I think, is helpful as we spark this conversation. So once again, tonight is about how do I network and grow within an organization? And we're going to unpack that topic. So before we do, I did want to talk about when you're talking about networking, internally versus externally, it's a little different, right? You're already part of an organization, you kind of have a mentor, you may have a manager, you have peers. and you have a job to do. But now, how does it translate into, all right, should I set up time with my boss's boss to have a conversation? It could be intimidating. You meet them at a national sales meeting, or you meet them at a regional meeting, and everyone's so open. Oh, call me, send me an email, but you just don't know how sincere it is at times, right? So should I really take them up on it? If I do, am I going to be, insulting them in terms of stealing their time? Am I going to be undermining my manager's authority with going above their head? Am I going to be looked at from my teammates as a goody two-shoes or someone who's trying to do more or undermine the things that they haven't done for the 30 years that they've been here potentially, right? So as you're navigating all these different things, sometimes that stalls your action. And what we want to do tonight is just give you some best practices, some pearls around how to get out of your own way and really drive action when it comes to networking internally within an organization. So Johnson & Johnson is a massive company, right? I'll give a little bit of history and then we're going to close out with some great facts and then specific opportunities in the local market. But Johnson & Johnson traditionally was functioned in 3 specific segments. You had consumer, everyone knows Band-Aid and Tylenol brand. You had pharma, which is Janssen, and then you had medical devices or med tech. So within that umbrella, we've now separated the consumer business and we're standing on the 2 legs of pharma and med tech. So if you think about it, over 250 operating companies within this umbrella. So if you think about navigating a matrix environment, that's what we do every single day. And it's almost like moving the Titanic to get things done on a daily basis, which is okay. There's a bureaucracy, there's politics, and all these things that are just part of corporate America, as we all know. But this massive enterprise has even more hurdles that we have to navigate to effectively do our job and navigate our system. So that's why this conversation is going to be critically important. And we have some of the dynamic leaders within our organization that have done just that. So I do want to toss the first question to Akiva. How do you define networking and how do you approach networking differently within an organization?
So I will say, as me defining networking is just establishing a relationship with somebody, just establishing that connection and then trying to foster that connection. As far as like, how do I create a network within the organization? I will say it's, when you have an opportunity to meet somebody, if you think they're interesting, I'm not ashamed to talk to somebody. So I will go up to them. I'll say, you look interesting. Can I know more about your role? Different things like that. Honestly, people love talking about themselves. It's very simple. So I just ask questions about what do you do just to create that connection. If you get an opportunity, you're speaking to somebody and they say, hey, feel free to set up some time. I set it up. I mean, they said it, so it's not like they lied. But I always do it immediately. So I meet them. They say, let's set up some time. The same day or the next day, I'll set up that time with them. And then the last thing that I'll do is within that conversation, how I grew my network, because I was in a little island in Boston. I mean, the broader organizations within New Jersey or other areas of the company. So when I'm in that conversation with them, I'll always ask, is there somebody that you think that I should talk to? And then they'll say a name, and then I'll say, can you create that connection? So it's not a cold connection. They'll establish it, and then I'll take it from there. And then that's how I just kind of like piggybacked and grew my network.
Awesome. Lisa, you want to take that?
Sure. Great thoughts. The one thing I've done successfully as well, though, in addition to setting up when it's offered to network, is I've done cold connections as well. And I think you can do it successfully. So, for example, if there's an area within our organization at Johnson & Johnson that I'm interested in pursuing, whether I've seen the hiring director or vice president or name, for example, in our job center or, in our system where we can look and see who reports to who, I will reach out to them and I'll just briefly introduce myself and I'll say, I'd love to get a few minutes on your calendar. I'm interested in your area of expertise and I'd love to learn from you. And would you mind if I did that? I've never, ever had somebody say no. And I think that's probably most organizations, and I agree with you, whether it's inside Johnson & Johnson or any company, most people want to help, most people want to talk, and they're happy to make a connection. So really good point. You're absolutely right.
So Lisa, to build on that, I think that's great. For some, it may be intimidating. And depending upon what level you're within an organization, the response may be different. So you're at a director level now. Did you have the same approach from when you were an individual contributor to now? And how did that approach change?
So it's interesting. So when I was an individual contributor, meaning a salesperson, I didn't do it that way. You're absolutely right. And I don't think I didn't do it because I was intimidated. I think I just didn't think about it, quite frankly, right? And so as I matured in my career and moved forward, I just thought, well, why not? Because I've had people reach out to me when I was a district manager and now as a region business director, and when I was in commercial marketing, because they wanted to learn from me. So I just thought, well, there are people reaching out to me that I don't know. Why shouldn't I do the same thing? But I do agree with you that it can be intimidating. And Eric, you brought up a good point a few moments ago about, if it's a step or two above, you want to be respectful to your boss and things of that nature. And I think interweaving it in a development conversation, or just having that natural relationship with your boss to say, I am going to reach out to, for example, our company president, just want to let you know because he offered to talk to me, or I wanted to just bring him up to date on a couple things I'm doing. Just wanted to keep you in the loop. A boss is not going to say, in general. So I don't want to assume that's every boss, but most people are going to be supportive, I would think.
I completely agree, and I think it's a fine line to navigate, right? Just by show of hands, how many are individual contributors, meaning they don't manage anyone, they just focus on themselves? Okay, so majority of the room. So thinking about what that email looks like, if you're sending it to the president, if you're sending it to the RBD or the AVP, it has to have some type of mutual value, right? So obviously a little bit about who you are, what you've been working on. And I think what's critically important is a shout out in terms of the development that your manager has been providing you. Because now if your manager gets hold of that email or you copy them in on it, they're going to be much more likely to embrace that connection because you're highlighting the things that they're doing for you. Does that make sense? So I think that's critically important, to bring people together to say, oh no, my manager's doing a great job. My most recent ride along, based upon the feedback, I was able to execute and I had my biggest deal X, Y, Z. Giving that context and linking it to something that's important to that senior leader. Far too often, you have a busy day, you have a town hall meeting, right? You're allowed to, all right, I have a call or I can join this town hall. How many of us every single time join the town hall? One hand, right? You prioritize your business and moving numbers. But what you're missing out on is the opportunity to understand what's on the top of the leader's mind, right? What are they focused on? What are they highlighting as success? Because if you at least take time to attend one of those town halls, now that cold email that you're sending to the company group chairman or the president, you can link back to what you heard them talk about that's important to them from that town hall. So now you're bringing value and you're talking about how you're executing on that strategy. So there's just little things that I think we need to approach differently to make sure that we're bringing that value and it's less intimidating because you're linking back to something that's important to them. So I think that was one thing that someone shared with me that I tried to implement across the years. So we talk about individual contributors, we talk about managers. I know a subset of the group here potentially maybe wants to get into management. So can you talk about how do you identify people within your organization who you want to partner with and add to your network? Do you just focus on people that are at your level? Do you focus on senior leaders? Do you focus on people that are in the role that you want to aspire to? Can you talk to us a little about that? Lisa, you want to start there?
So just so I make sure I answer correctly, are you asking me how I look for people as future leaders, or how I integrate myself to be a continued future leaders in others' eyes?
How do you identify the people that you want to connect with? So send that cold call email or build it within your network.
Thank you. So what I'll do is I've done a couple different things, but I'll typically look at, I think you brought up a great point about town halls, or, obviously Johnson & Johnson is a publicly traded company. We have annual analyst reports quarterly. And so all of our products that are doing incredibly well are highlighted in there. And for example, one is BioSense Webster is an area. And so I know nothing about BioSense Webster, but I about 6-7 months ago reached out to the vice president of sales and I mentioned how well they were doing in an annual quarterly update. And I said, I'd love to get on your books and just introduce myself. I'm a sales leader on the neuro science side of the business. I'd love to let you know who I am, and I'd also love to learn a little bit more about your business because you guys are doing incredibly well. And also a friend of mine was in marketing over there who used to be at DePuy. And it was interesting. I got time with him. I got time reconnected with my friend from Depew, who's now out in California. We used to be in Boston as well as when you were. And so that's how I approach that. And I think, to your point, incorporating some things that are important to them, I think helped open that door more quickly.
Love it. Akiva?
So the people that I approach are dependent upon my goals for the year. So I'd say earlier in my career, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I just set up time with everybody. It's very easy to get like 15, 30 minutes on somebody's calendar. And so it was me just talking to different functions to understand what are the different roles within the company. How can I establish a career? If I found a train that like made sense to me. So I thought I wanted to get into supply chain. Okay, well then I've decided that this is maybe my next role. Then I started talking to a lot of people within supply chain to identify if there's some switch I wanted to make. When I decided to actually make the transition into marketing, not even exaggerating, I talked to at least 50 people throughout Johnson & Johnson, and that's how I established them. I just talked to more and more and more people because I was coming from engineering into marketing, and that transition was difficult. And the first question people asked me is, why do you want to move into marketing? And because of me networking, they always ask me that question anyways. By the time I actually interviewed for the role, I had a very polished response. Sometimes I, just want to move up in leadership. And so I want to have a strong network of different leaders in the organizations. It's important to not just establish a network within your department. It's important to go across organizations, businesses, functions, because people are going to offer different perspectives. Also, don't forget about your own peers. It's great to have a great relationship with them. So depending upon my goals for that year or at that specific period of time, that's how I just establish what network I want to have, and those are the people that I'll seek.
Love that. So how do you integrate your manager into some of those conversations?
It depends. So if it's a professional development conversation, like I have an interest right now in business development, and I'm always transparent with my manager what I want to do with my career. It's very important because they cannot help. Or anybody you talk to, if you have an interest in something, let people know, because they're willing to help. They'll let you know when there's opportunities. They'll let you know people to talk to. So I'm always very transparent about what I'm interested in. But with what I'll leverage my manager with is I said I was interested in business development, and he connected me with the head of business development, and I had a conversation with him, and then we met on a regular basis. Even with my mentors, I let them know that I was interested in that, and they did the same. And so that's how I use my manager for those particular aspects. Or even if I want to do like a skip level, I'll let my manager know. I'll say, is it okay if I set up regular time with like the VP? And they're always, unless they're a terrible manager, they're going to say yes. And so from all of those different opportunities, that's how I can, they've kind of navigated those scenarios.
Love that. So I want to pause there for a second, because you said a lot, both of you did. And think about when you have these intentional connects, right? Far too often we don't ask to shadow. So Akilah mentioned jumping from one function to another, right? Some people are wanting to jump from sales to marketing, or marketing to engineering, or commercial operations to commercial education. Having the open dialogue and requesting time to just shadow someone in that role is something that is, I think, not done enough. And that's something that we definitely want to promote, and I think has boded well. I think the second piece is, you talked about interviews and being polished with all these answers. That's a great question for a manager, right? How do you support your people who want to do more and network within the organization? Like, do we ever put our managers who are hiring us on the spot to address and answer that question? Because if you get that answer on the upfront, now you know how to navigate even better within that space. So I love that point. So kind of transitioning, we talked about how to make a purposeful request to connect. So I love that. Within J&J, we have ERGs. So if you don't know, ERG is an employee resource group, excuse me. And these ERGs are supposed to bring like-minded people together and for a common cause or a common good to serve the community within their local headquarter, network, or community, or even from a field-based perspective. So we have ERGs like WLI, which is the Women's Leadership Initiative. We have the AALC, which is the African Ancestry Leadership Council. We have Open and Out for our LGBTQ plus community. We have a lot of ERGs. So can you talk to us around how do you leverage ERGs to expand your network within an organization?
Yeah, I have a great response. I was telling somebody about how I moved to DC recently, and about people are friendly, and they were like, no, but they are. But I was living in Boston for a really long time, and developing a network in Boston is tough because people there are very cold. The funny thing is they're not actually cold. They just have a very hard exterior. And then once you get through, they're like,
all
mush.
true.
Yeah.
It's very true.
But like getting through was so difficult. So like for me, how I established my network, I would actually go to people in the hallway and say hi, and they would like look at me like, why are you talking to me? So how I established my network was initially through ERGs. Y'all know, if you know anything about me, is I join every organization that's possible. And so that's how I got my initial network, is through the ERGs, and then expanded. I was working out in the gym all the time, meeting a lot of different people. So that was like my initial network. But then as I navigated through the organization, the people that I met through the ERGs allowed me to get opportunities that I never would have gotten. Because a lot of people don't typically see the value in ERGs. They think it's like a fun activity, or if you're really big in giving back, I'll do that. No, there's a lot more that you get from an ERGs, but it's like soft. You can't really say like tangible, but you get a lot from an ERG, from leadership experience, exposure, having interaction with people, expanding your network. So I always tell people the reason that I was able to successfully transition from quality engineering into marketing, which people say it never happens, was because I was leading an ERG event. I got connected with the president of marketing. I saw him after that event, and I was told him I was interested in marketing. He said, set up some time with me. And because of that connection, I said, can you connect me with two people that are within marketing? And it's the president telling him to meet with me. So I think that gave me a little bit of extra push. But the person that I met and it ended up becoming my mentor and then my boss, happened to be hiring for a role. And so right when I met them, they were like, okay, let's talk about the role that I have available. How easy it is to make that transition. And that all came because I was leading an event through an ERG. So these are a lot of tangibles that you get, and that's how you can really establish your network and navigate through the organization and diversify your network. Because sometimes it's very hard to diversify your network when you're only focused on your actual job.
Love that.
No, I agree with your points. And in regards to the Boston comment I made earlier, I'm from Ohio, so I moved to Boston, and it is tough when you're not from there and born and raised. No disrespect to Boston, I've been there 20 years, but it can be tough when you move someplace new. So joining an ERG or joining a different group is a great way to network. But I would say, in addition to the comments made, is when you're involved in those organizations, people get to know you outside your job and who you are, right? It's more than just, here's our commercial partner in marketing. Here's your sales director. Here's your district manager or area vice president. Here is, Lisa, and this is who she is. And I know her a little bit more about her personally. I know her in a different professional setting other than just in a meeting discussing something that's important to her or something that's important to me. And so I think that's important as well, because people hire people based on competencies and what they bring. But people hire people they like and that they know and that they're comfortable with. And so I think getting yourself involved in those different types of organizations allows you to show a layer of yourself and a part of yourself that maybe you don't always have when you're in a conference room or on a Zoom call and you're trying to get to and solve a business challenge. They get to know you as a person, which I think is very positive.
So I love this. I see some people taking notes. I'm super impressed and not surprised just based on the responses. And we all know you guys are the best of the best, but you probably always didn't have this natural grace when it came to networking. So think back to early in your career, maybe when you stumbled, what obstacles presented themselves that you maybe fell over? And how did you navigate around those obstacles to get better? So think back when maybe you weren't as savvy networking within the organization.
You know how I used to think about moving forward in my career? I thought, if I do a really good job and I'm not the hardest worker, that I am going to get promoted. And I think that just came from me being a naive young businesswoman when I started my career. And I know I'm not alone in that. And I looked up one day and I thought, there are people passing me by, and you should never judge your career versus somebody else, right? But sometimes it's hard not to. And I thought, well, I'm as qualified or more qualified, or I'm as strong of a contender. Why didn't I get that opportunity? Or why wasn't I tapped on the shoulder? And I soon started to realize that how well you do in your job is critically important. When I look at my team members, my managers, my sales reps, they are not going to have my support to move forward if they're not doing well in their current role. That's because I'm not comfortable. My thought is, if you can't handle your current role and do well, how are you going to be moving forward in something else? So I'm very passionate about that. And so I think it's critical to not only do great in your role, but to get to know people and network with them. And that took me a little bit of time. And I learned from that. And perhaps all of you are more wise than I was when I was in my early career. But I've learned that whether you're early, mid, or late in your career, networking is interwoven throughout and is critical as excelling in your job.
So when I was a quality engineer, and I don't know if a lot of people work with quality, but we're like the police. It's our job to like look at, what any decision that's being made, and we say yes or no, like we're the stopgap. So it was not very important for me to have a solid network because what I said went, But what I found is that I was focusing on developing a network like outside of my function, but I did not focus on actually establishing a network within my team, like the quality engineering department, and also the functions that were like touching me. And so what I found because of that is I wasn't given much grace. And just being transparent, me being a Black female, there's a lot of biases that people have against you. And so when you make a mistake, it becomes a defining character flaw rather than it's just being you making a mistake. And so I found when I focused on establishing a connection with people, I could let them to get to know who I am. They got to see all the best parts of me, that when they got to see one bad side of me, they didn't say this was you. No, this is a part of you. And so I found that I struggled a lot early in my career when I moved from quality. And when I moved over into marketing, it was a very humbling experience because you have no authority. And it's all about building a solid connection with people and really making that connection. And I found a lot more successes when I really, really worked to establish a strong connection with my inner circle and then the people that I work with closely. And it allowed me to navigate a lot better.
Love it. So I'm loving the flow. Ashford mentioned earlier, we do have a virtual component. So I want to check in with Ashford. Are there any questions coming in from the chat?
Not yet.
Okay. Perfect. And once again, I want this to be a dialogue. So if you have questions, let us know. We're anchored right now in that obstacle. So if you have, obstacles that you're facing right now in terms of navigating or getting that next meeting, I would love to hear the questions that you have, and maybe we can tackle it from a panel perspective. Who wants to take the first shot?
Hi, my name is Adeni. I'm a salesperson with RJ Reynolds. For me, I connect with you saying networking is big, but I want to ask, looking at it from me being new on my role, I'm about 6 months into the role. Personally, I'm defining to say I want to master my role for maybe a year, 18 months. But do you think 6 months is enough to start that conversation about active networking and seeking next level?
So I think there's a lot of variables there. So I would say, I'm not going to say yes, I'm not going to say no. I think it's dependent. I think you should be having a regular conversation with your boss. So in the first 6 months, this is just my opinion, is I've seen, typically that's when you're learning your job. You're not just networking, but you're understanding it. People are building impressions of you. You're building impressions of the job, etc. So regular check in with your superior and your people that depend on you. So it's maybe not just your boss. You may collaborate and work with others, and just making sure you're meeting expectations, they're meeting expectations of yours, etc. And continue check-ins, because then, if you keep hearing, yes, things are going well, then you have the opportunity to say, okay, begin having that conversation with your boss of, I continue to check in as we've talked monthly. I continue to meet expectations. What else can I do? Accept more, ask for more. And then a couple months later, you're suddenly at 9 months. And then it's like, hey, we're heading towards a year, these are some things I'm very interested in. I'd love to learn more. Are you comfortable having me starting to do these things? If you've met expectations, you've done a good job, I don't know of any bot, and I'll speak for myself, I wouldn't hold somebody back. I'd want them to start looking at and networking. Typically at Johnson & Johnson, again, they do make exceptions. Someone needs to be in their role for at least 18 months before they're released for another position. However, that's not tried and true. We do have exceptions there, but usually those people who get released are the ones who've done what I just said. They've done great in their current role. They're networking. They've accepted more responsibility. And there's someone that the manager, director, or VP says, wow, this is someone who is impressive. I support them to move forward because they've shown that they can more than handle this job and they're ready for the next challenge.
I'd also like to add, I think establishing a network doesn't have to be just with you transitioning into a new role. It could just be also you having connections with others, because as you're moving through your role, especially as you being a new employee, there's going to be experiences that other people have or scenarios that they've had that they can offer perspectives that you wouldn't know about. That's why I'm a huge advocate for mentorship, because somebody that's been established for a while, they've seen everything and they can always offer you something way better than I thought about it as far as approaching a particular scenario. So I don't think there's any harm in growing your network even from day number one. I just think that as you move through your role, maybe your goals with that network may change, but I don't think there's no harm, within you growing a network.
Yeah, and I agree with that point. I think from day one, you need to be networking, and how you network is different, right? As a new person, if you're going into any formal training for a week or 2 weeks, you have line of sight to the entire organization. So you have marketing, you have all these different functional partners coming in to present to that newer class, right? So identifying the key people that are there and part of a new product launch that you're going to be responsible for, selling. If you have a dynamic market, you're in the DC, Baltimore area, great opportunity. So there's going to be value that you can bring to them immediately, right? So I think how you network is different. And then networking across your peer group is critically important as a newer person. And you're in the mindset of help me. So they're going to be in their teaching mode, right? So if you identify people that they want to be a manager in the near future. Well, hey, mentor me, teach me, because that's what you're trying to do. So use me as, a subject associated with where you want to advance. So I think from day one, you need to start, mentoring, networking within your organization. When I was in primary sales school on the vision care side, first day, I'm green, I don't know what's going on. We just finished the test, everyone's ready to get out of there. And the sales trainer pulled me to the side and he said, it's never too early to step up. And I'm like, all right, is this guy Yoda? Like, what's going on? Like, what does that truly mean? So I walked away kind of just thinking, all right, what does that really mean? But I joined a team where it was very junior and they were looking for people to take on more senior responsibility within the team. And then that's when his voice kind of ran through my mind to say, it's never too early to step up. And everyone's interactions are different. Sometimes you join a team where you have half of the team has been there 15 plus years. And they always look at you as the junior person. Oh, you don't know, and they kind of put you in that box. But you have to figure out how to leverage their experience in those early stages, especially when you're new, to assert yourself as a valuable contributor to the team, but then also kind of have them share the knowledge that they've acquired over those years. So I think that's a brilliant question. Thank you for stepping up and asking it. Another one. Let's pass that mic. You want to step up and introduce yourself? Well, it's for the viewers, if we have anyone online,
William Thompson with Gilead Pharmaceuticals. So my question was just, what are your thoughts about leveraging national conferences, media meetings, national sales conferences, and then how would you approach that?
I think it's a great opportunity for you to expand your network. As I mentioned before, supporting the Boston area, it's in a little silo. And so you only really get to meet the people that are in that area. But Johnson & Johnson is a huge company. And so those are great opportunities for you to expand your network and meet a lot of people that you would have never connected with. But also, it's a conference. So you can meet people in other industries to really broaden your network. These are all helpful. I shouldn't say that you should go into you establishing your network with a goal like you're just trying to take something from that network. I think it's with you creating that connection and getting to know that person as an individual. You never know when you need them. And that shouldn't be the intent, you making a connection with somebody. But when you're there, like when I tell you, when I go to conferences, I am focused. Like if I'm there to get a job, that is my goal. And I talk to every single recruiter. If my job is there to create a network, then I meet as many people as possible. I'll be honest with you, people assume that they're mean if you go up to them and talk to them, but most people are very nice. And so if you go to them, you say, hi, I'm Akila. I want to grow my network, or hi, I'm new to the area. I want to get to know you. A lot of people are open to have that conversation. And so I've done it all my career, and that's allowed me to really, really expand my network. So when you're there, you should really focus on it as much as possible, trying to diversify your network. It's a great opportunity.
And what Akila's really saying there is you're demonstrating the skills to the people that are in position to hire around what you can contribute or bring to the role that you may be aspiring to. So in that interaction, they're seeing that she's assertive. She can speak with authority. She can take control of the conversation. These are all the things that are in the back of hiring managers' minds, right? So if you're kind of in the corner where I'll wait, and then when they dart off, then I'll grab them in the hallway. They see that, and they see through that, and they're not going to be thinking about you top of mind when those next opportunities come. So demonstrate your skill set in action when you're having these conversations with these people at conventions or conferences.
Can I add to that? So I might have need to clarify. I meant to say national sales. I meant like your national sales meetings.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Same.
Yeah.
Okay. So the reason why I asked, I've been hired COVID, so we haven't had any meetings together. So we have our first one in July. So in January, so our national sales meeting. So I just want to see some areas of opportunity where I may be able to take advantage.
Sure. So I will talk a little bit about that. So now you have two perspectives, the convention side and the national sales meeting. So first of all, the higher your leaders go within an organization, the less feedback they get. Meaning nobody gets off a call and says to me, Lisa, that was the best Zoom call ever. Nobody at our meeting, we had a live meeting in May, they said, wow, this was great at the end, but it wasn't like, oh my God, Lisa, that opening statement was just beyond. So I share that because, leaders, everybody likes to get feedback. But when you're at your next national meeting, the president who's up there, the director of marketing, the VP of sales, I bet you they are dynamic on stage. Tell them that. Catch them at the happy hour or catch them, before breakfast and say, boy, I was inspired by the words that you said. I was inspired by these few comments that you made, or I just wanted to introduce myself and this is who I am. And thank you so much for allowing us to have this meeting. It's wonderful to be back together again, isn't it? I'm sure you went through a lot of planning and care to make this so special for us. People love that. And then it's a natural transition to say, and they'll remember you, and this is who I am, and introduce yourself. And then there's nothing wrong when you get back to just send maybe an email or so a couple weeks later and say, just reintroducing myself. So inspiring. Thank you for that great meeting. Because these national meetings cost millions of dollars. It's an investment to bring people together. And thank them for that and say, I'd love to get a few minutes on your calendar. I'd love to learn about you and your career. People, I'm telling you, nobody's going to say no to that. So I hope our answers helped you.
Actually, can I add just one thing? This may sound, corny, but I actually take notes when I'm at these meetings because early on in my career, if there is an opportunity to ask a question in a town hall, I always ask a question. Most people know that they're like, I know Akila has a question. But it makes people know you. And so I take notes. I say, okay, what can I ask that sounds intelligent in this meeting? So as you take notes, that'll allow you to, one, stand out in the meeting. It'll also, as you said, when you have an interaction with that person, to use that little sound bite to talk to them. Or if you want to send an email, I've done that a lot. I've seen people in presentations and I'm like, this is a great person I want to get to know. I take a little note and then I'll send them a note. But yeah, just take notes while you're at the town hall. That's lesson.
You had a question?
Oh, yeah. So Brian Odom with Blueprint Medicines. And I was just going to add on to what you all shared and piggyback on your question.
If you don't mind using the mic.
Yeah, sorry. Hello. All right. But great insight, great questions. Thanks for sharing all these gems. I typically try to be very intentional when I go to these national meetings and speak with somebody on a senior leadership team, CO something, CE something, like CF something. Same as Lisa said, just introduce yourself. a couple marketing people, and then some individual, and see what kind of initiatives, what kind of projects are going on in the home office. Maybe you can go to the home office and be a part of that, because the whole time you're trying to establish your brand, and like that follows you throughout your career. And that's just a great way to network for them to figure out who you are, in addition to, you know, what they've heard or what you've accomplished. And then other leaders within your region, because when it comes to calibration, like those are the people that are sitting in the calibration room and they're stacking you up against the other representatives throughout the region, and you don't know what the heck the other, you know, like his competencies, his performance, but also having a relationship and knowing who some of those leaders are within your region. So, I mean, the end goal is to have sponsors and allies all throughout the company. So the more you can build your brand and just be intentional about those meetings. We don't get a chance to see each other regularly other than Zoom, as Lisa mentioned. And so when you're face to face, like, map it out. Okay, I want to see one person on the senior leadership, a couple on the marketing, a couple within my region, whatever that looks like for you.
And what was your name again?
Ryan.
Ryan, you mentioned allies and sponsors. Can you differentiate those two and define them? If not, we
go back around to, I have a definition that's not polished enough.
okay, no worries.
Yeah.
We can unpack it if you don't mind.
Yeah, so like a sponsor is somebody who, like, they know like what you represent, they know like what you accomplish, what your brand is, and they're speaking for you when it's time for you to go for an opportunity, and they're almost vouching for you. Where I think an ally works somewhat in that manner, but they may not vouch for you. It's more like they're more like a mentor, more someone to give you guidance, some direction, and, you know, some input or feedback. And they're just, you know, you can be vulnerable with them, and they'll give you just some unbiased feedback that you can use along the way.
Love that.
A sponsor, I'm sorry, Karen Madison with AstraZeneca. A sponsor's going to lay out some political capital, some cash, you know, some of their cachet for you. So when you're not in the room, they are talking about you. They may mention your name about a job, and you have no idea that they're talking about you. So your aim is, allies are great, but sponsors are better when you're trying to move up in your organization.
And I wanted to start there and define those, because it's critically important as you have conversations with your manager to be intentional around what you want. Mentors, allies, and sponsors are all different. So making sure as you do your calibration of who's in your network, do you have enough sponsors? And sometimes they're unseen, but you need to now ask for that sponsorship within your organization. And if you have it, great, but you need to be intentional with that conversation with your manager if you're seeking that. Critically important.
Sorry, just to jump on that. So is it okay to say that your sponsor will naturally always be the line manager? Because
No.
It's usually not. No, it's not. I shouldn't say it's usually not. It often is not. It can be, but it's often someone who who's worked with you before or knows you, and can, as is being said, can vouch for who you are and your brand. But it's many times not your line manager. So, for example, it might be someone who's, of higher authority, who can go in and talk to somebody who is hiring for that job that you want, to say, I've worked with Lisa before. These are the things I've witnessed. This is why I think she would be a great person to fill X role. Okay, so it sometimes it's your boss, but many times I've found that it's often someone else.
Cool. We have one in the back. I'm gonna throw that mic back there. If you don't mind passing that mic.
Good evening. My name is Ken Ward with Things Rising Solutions, and I had a question regarding. It's been my personal experience. I've been working for 30 some odd years, but in organizations, one of the easiest ways to network is by being a solution oriented individual. By when you make those introductions, do your research and try to be able to offer solutions during those conversations. But having people in your organization know, and this might be different in your organization, but might be that having people in your organization know that you can be the go-to person. And that could be a series of things, like know your own value, know your own history and your ability to solve problems. And Lisa, is that the way it is in your organization, or?
It's so interesting you say that. I'm actually thinking of someone on my team who just came back over. Several people in the room know her. She's been a district sales manager for 25 years at Johnson & Johnson. And some of you, that's a long time in any job. But she's exceptional. She could be beyond all of us here. She could have gone much higher. And for a variety of personal and professional reasons, she just loves being a DM, and that's what she's great at. But she's solution oriented. I can't tell you how many times in my career as her boss, and as several people worked with her on the other side of the business, the mood side of the business recently, she comes in with solutions. It's not complaints, but it's if she sees something isn't correct, she'll say, here's an idea. Why don't we approach it this way? Or how about this? Or things of that nature. Or if the data isn't correct, she'll sit down and look at it and decipher why. And so she has a reputation. So this is why that's important. You talked about calibration a few minutes ago. When I go into calibration and I mentioned her name, she already has a great reputation. I do say this is what she's done this year, not what she's done 5 years ago. This is what she's done this year. These are the additional things she's contributed. And for her to get that highest leadership rating is not a difficult sell because of the solutions she's brought along and all the people she's impressed throughout the year. And that's her brand that she's known for. Great question.
Okay. Cool. Any other questions? I saw one last hand in the back. Yes.
For those who haven't met, my name is B.N. Bonnell. I'm the CEO for Encompass Remote. So, one of the things you mentioned, I just wanted to add a little bit to that. The question about mentor, ally, and sponsor, they can all be the same person, also can be different, right? But really, when you think of it, I'm going to use, we'll call it street language, right? Is who has the juice. So a mentor has the juice. A mentor does not have a juice sometimes, right? But really, when you think of sponsor has the juice. And that person can then, may not like you, may not be your mentor, but that can help you get across the line. So when you try to, get, one of the comments Lisa made was, at a conference, walking up to someone saying, oh, what you said inspired me. Please make sure before you said that, at least from my perspective, you need to let me know what I said that inspired you. Because I've just been on stage, said a whole lot of stuff. If you say that, I will follow up. And there's one thing, at least for me personally, if I follow up, well, what did I say that inspired you? And goes pretty much, we're done. We will have, pleasantries. But that really, so I forgot your name, I'm sorry. Keila said earlier, it will derail you for a little bit, but you still have a chance to come back from it. Okay, that's something you got to allow yourself to understand that your mistakes, depending on you can stop there, or you can allow yourself to recover from that. Because if the meeting is a whole week, okay, or a whole weekend, you can always come back and say, listen, I've never spoke to a CEO before, or I never spoke to a VP of marketing. I was a little bit nervous, and I had a chance to, be honest about it, because sometimes it's nerve-wracking. So we can go through a whole lot of different stories and talk about all the different things that happen, at least in my personal career. But that's something you have to own, So looking for that person with the juice. You can be careful about it too, because we can see through it, but it's okay. There's nothing wrong with you hunting for someone with the juice. Just, talk about transparency. We all see it. It is okay, and don't be afraid of it. Basically, that's what I want to talk about. Saying about the three different things you mentioned, right?
Love that. Authenticity is key, right? You got to be true to who you are. So let's pivot back to some of the questions that we're gonna, continue to spark conversation with. Is there anything that you do quarterly that help you stay connected with the internal network that you've created?
I'm not gonna lie, I always say that I am, but I don't. But I do have regular conversations with my mentors. I have different levels and types of mentors, and I do either have monthly or quarterly meetings with them. So I will say that. But one thing that I added to my calendar, and I am still going to be working on, I am actually transitioning out of the company, and so it's actually going to be really important for me to maintain my network. So I am actually going to make a concerted effort to ensure that I maintain the relationships with the many amazing people that I've worked with at Johnson & Johnson. And so I scheduled every Saturday on my calendar to reach out to my network and just set up. It can be as simple as you reaching out through LinkedIn and seeing an article that's great, and you can just send it to them saying, hey, I was thinking about you.
And I do like, I often coach my managers and reps to do the same thing as far as putting time on your calendar for yourself, right? Whether you're, regardless of what you do professionally, we all are very busy. And sometimes the last person we think of is us, right? And so I don't know if it's a Friday afternoon, I don't know if it's Monday morning, or if it's some other time, but I would encourage you to put time on your calendar regularly to reach out to those mentors or to create new mentors and make sure that you prioritize yourself as much as you prioritize your career and your job every day and being excellent. Because if you do, you know, whether you are a DM for 25 years that I just shared with you a moment ago, or you're the future CEO of Johnson & Johnson or any company, you still have the opportunity to network along the way. And those relationships, it's amazing how relationships ebb and flow and you run into people. I recently reconnected with someone who was a vice president at DePuy. My cousin is a very good friend of a patent attorney in the med tech business in Boston. I reached out to him recently, was talking to him, so I know him through my cousin. And he said, oh, you need to get in touch with Peter Stebbins, who was a VP at DePuy MyTech, who retired several years ago. And here he knows this attorney. He's a mutual friend of ours. No idea. That's how small the world is, and we know we can all give examples personally and professionally, but that's just an example of, you know, bringing those relationships full circle again. You never know, someone that you interact with now, you may not see for a while, and 5 years later, you know, you reconnect, and it's like, Lisa, oh my gosh, how have you been? When I talked to Peter, we're going to have lunch soon, and it was just like, how are you doing? I've heard great things. What's new with you? It was a natural, quick conversation. So, you know, make sure, it's a small world out there, and you just never know who knows who.
Love that. So think through eliminating people from your network. So have you ever had to do that? If so, why? And then how did you do it, you know, effectively and then within the political environment that we work with?
I wouldn't say I eliminate people from my network. I would say that I just don't foster a relationship, like a continuing relationship with them.
Okay.
I mean, because as you said before, you never know when you're going to interact with that person. It's not necessary to be nasty or mean to somebody. It's just you have walls. So, you know, I see you, we communicate, and then we don't communicate again. Because many times in my past where a person that I don't necessarily care for has come up, and I'm grateful that I did not burn that bridge, you know? And so for me, it's about, do I work to maintain a relationship with somebody? Do I reach out to them, or do I let them, we lead different lives, you know?
Okay.
So interesting. So I was talking to a woman who used to work for me, and she's a new mom, and I'm a mom. My daughter's a little bit older, and we were just having a mom conversation, and we started talking about people in the med tech business and pharma biotech in Boston. And she said, oh, you should talk to so-and-so. Well, I used to work with so-and-so. And one time, this woman so offended me in a conversation in regards to, it was a business conversation. I just thought, I don't want to talk to her again. And so I graciously told my friend, I said, thank you so much. I used to work with her, and I can see why she's doing X, Y, and Z in Boston, and she's sharp and brilliant and highly educated, Ivy League education. But you know what? We just look at business differently, and I'm not sure I'm comfortable reaching back out to her, but I am so glad you have a connection with her because she's somebody to know. But I'm not going to talk to her. So.
I love that. I love that. So how many are familiar with the term or acronym CLEM?
Career limiting move.
Career limiting move, CLM, right? So far too often, you know, especially if you're early in your career, you may make one mistake where someone important, that sponsor level, that CEO, that VP level sees it and you're off their list, right? And unfortunately that happens. But at the same time, you have to be mindful the people that are in your network, have they had those transgressions, right? So when you have that conversation with that higher level, you know, CEO or VP or director, I wouldn't be as transparent with the people that are in your network, right? But you can also navigate carefully mentioning names in context of the conversation and see their reaction to those individuals, right? So now you see, are they warm? Are they cold on these individuals? Do they just not know them? Because I think that's critically important because people start to lump people together, right? As we start assessing talent, as we go through calibration, you start, especially if you're early in career and you start in a class or a leadership development program, oh, that's this group. We know what they're about. They're not on the track to management or they're not serious about this career. And you don't want to ever get lumped in with those group of individuals. So you want to own your own development, have your own path, and then tread lightly with sharing your complete network with those sponsor conversations that you're having. So that's critically important as well. Yep. So I know we had some new faces walk in. It looks like we may have a question in the chat. Ashford?
Yes, we do not have a question in the chat, but back to your original your statement about Clem. How can you, as a professional, either starting out or 10-year in, align yourself with the right people but establish the best boundaries?
I'll take that first and we'll toss it. So I think it's important to be realistic, right? For the most part in this room, we're all Black. So we don't have the opportunity to make multiple mistakes. When you're in that national sales meeting, they know you're the Black person, right? So if you say something or do something, they see it, they identify it, and then you have a stigma associated with how you're tasked and labeled within your organization. So I mean, from the day you set foot off that airplane and you're at the meeting, your hotel, you're working that entire time. So I think it's important to navigate that space effectively and very carefully, not putting undue stress on you, but know what time it is. As soon as you get off that plane, you're in work zone. And if you're going to just the gym, you're in work mode. So, you know, dress the part that you really want to focus in on gaining. So I think it's important to understand the mentality that it takes. It's draining. It requires a lot of effort, but that's the reality that we have to live with as well. So I'll toss it to the panel based on Ashford's question.
Listen and observe. I'm a very talkative person, but when I'm at work, I'm not as talkative depending upon the person that if I have a very strong relationship with them, then they'll see all of me, or not all of me, but like 80% of me.
87?
But no, it's really important, especially when you're new, to just listen, observe the room, observe the social norms, identify when it's a time to speak, and make sure what you say is intelligent. And so a lot of the times, especially if I'm in a new room, I may not say anything, or if anything, I'll ask one question just to make sure they know that I'm there. But no, it is because once you are there and you kind of get a feel for the team and the room, then you can identify who the people that you would like to align with, you'd like to establish a relationship with, and the people that you don't. They may not be that person that is the highest person in the room, but they may be the person that has actual, like, the political power, or the people that a lot of people have a great relationship with. And then just allow them to get and see pieces of you, but not all of you, because that's another piece that I had to learn over my career is give pieces of you, you know. But yeah, just listen and observe it overall.
So it's so interesting, that question. Thank you. I know it as people start forming opinions immediately, regardless of when you come into a new, not just a company, when you go into a new job, they form opinions right away, whether it's people that report into you or your peers or those that you report into. And so I think it's really important to be your genuine, authentic self. I think it's important to be on how you phrase things and how you respond to something, be solution oriented versus being the person who goes in and says, here's all the problems and they don't have a solution. That is so frustrating as a leader to have somebody do that, right? And I think just continuing to look around and say, especially if you're at a big meeting or something, you know, when I was a district manager, and I don't say this now because I have district managers that report into me, but I remember when I was a new DM and I hired some people, some young adults, you know, pretty much right out of their master. So this was their first big professional job. And I used to tell them nothing good happens after 10 o'clock at a national meeting. And, you know, so just keep that in mind. And, you know, there's some chuckling, but, you know, you don't want to be the person who's that person who's always shutting down the bar and things. And I know that sounds silly, but somebody who's relatively new and they're used to a couple months ago being at a social event on a college campus who may not realize this is very different. This is a professional atmosphere, a business atmosphere, and you're going to be looked at differently. And if you want to have a career at any company and you want to have some track, then you need to make sure you're wise on your choices and who you hang out with. So I don't have those conversations anymore, but when I was a first line leader, I held hands with some of my reps and I said, you're about to go away for 4 to 6 weeks. Be smart.
Yeah.
And they all were smart. So.
Yeah, that's important. But I think there's also a balance with that, right? Because you don't want to be perceived as the person that can't let their hair down. You don't want to be perceived as the person who doesn't come to the bar and have a cocktail with the senior leader. So there's a balance. You don't want to be jumping over the bar and serving the drinks, but you also need to be in the room and in the spaces where you're not just talking about sharing success stories and taking the notes and having all these great questions. You want to be the person that they can also connect with. So you have to strike that balance within your organization. And to Akila's point, understanding, listening, and learning to understand the true cultural norms within whatever organization you're a part of. So that's important. Any questions as we pause there? Yes.
So as we're talking about leveraging our internal networks and connecting with people, one thing that I always hear from my leadership and my mentors is having a good development plan. So as all three of you have shown great progress in your careers, what looks good? I mean, we know short-term, medium-term, long-term goals, but give us some pearls on how we can write a good development plan.
Lisa, you want to take that first?
So I would, we're very big into competencies within our organization. And so, you know, aligning, here are the competencies that I bring. Here's my transferable skill set, right? Because we've all seen people who've gotten a job that they haven't had maybe leadership, people leadership responsibility, or they've moved 1 or 2 levels at a time, and you wonder how that happened. It likely has come back to they had a strong transferable skill set. They aligned with the competencies, and they can show what they can bring to the opportunity. So I think having things like that, where you can say, I wouldn't get wrapped around a title, because I think sometimes when people get wrapped around a title of this is the job I want, people may or may not see you in that job. But if you say, I want to be a second line people leader, I want to be a general manager, you know, something of that nature, then it's more broad, and you have the opportunity to say, and here's the skills I bring, here's the competencies I bring. What do you think when you're having that development discussion? And I think it just goes better versus saying, I want to be X this job in 18 months, because what if you don't get that job in 18 months, right? You've put yourself in a hole and in a corner versus really being more broad and thoughtful.
So everything she said was great. So I'll just kind of add on some other things. It's important to have conversations, obviously, with your manager to identify gaps that they identify, but also have conversations with people that are around you. Something that a manager once told me was, if somebody gives you feedback, take it as a gift. Like, don't be offended, because if somebody took the time to give you that feedback, it's probably something that you didn't notice about yourself. But I do every year, it's usually around development time. It's like I sit with myself, I reflect to say, okay, what areas do I see myself struggling with, that I have gaps? And then for me, those are the areas that I try to fill in. So, I mean, one of them was around communicating. So I had a whole plan. I was going to attend these classes, doing Toastmasters, all these different things. But identifying your gaps personally, either from your career. Okay, so one is identifying your goals within your own skill set, but then also identifying where you want to go with your career. And so what I always do is I look at my next role and then my role after that. And I actually go and look at job descriptions and I write down what skills do I need that I don't have. And then what I'll do is I'll say to my manager, these are the skills or experiences that I need to have. And then I'll work on a plan for that year to make sure that I have them. Because if you aren't looking ahead on where you're trying to go, then when you're ready to make that transition, you don't actually have those experiences that you need to make that transition. Now you have to wait even longer to get those experiences.
Love that. Well said by both panelists. I think just another take on it, far too often we put on that development plan or next career move things that we know the organization embraces. So as an example, I need cross-functional experience. I need to go to marketing now because I've only been in sales, or I've been in marketing. I need to go to sales or a commercial part of the organization. And I kind of throw that out. And I say, first and foremost, what do you like to do? Like, what do you have fun doing? Because when you jump into marketing because that's the box you're trying to check, it usually does not turn out well. Or if you're in marketing, you want to jump to sales or just try it out, and you're really not committed to that side of the business, it doesn't end well. So figure out what you like to do, overlay that with your strengths and the competencies associated with these different roles, and I think that's a strong recipe for success. Josh?
Do you, when you're setting out your goals, do you give yourself like a timeline for these goals?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's important to make your goals SMART. I mean, everybody knows specific, measurable, actionable results, and time bound. Yes. And so it is important to do that. And I set, my goals for the year, and then I set my goals for 5 years. I always do that. And then you refresh them, because I'll be honest, you change as an individual, your goals change as an individual. So it's really important for you to reevaluate these goals that you set every single year. I'm not sure what your timeline is, but for me, I do it on an annual basis.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I would also say give yourself grace. If, let's say, you select a goal and you've tried several times to reach that goal, and for whatever reason it's not happening. Maybe you want to be a region business director, and you've interviewed for 4 or 5 different times, and with different therapeutic areas or whatever, or different areas within the organization, med tech, pharma, biotech, for example, in our organization, and it's not happening. Step back for a moment, and I do agree in getting the feedback along the way. You're owed that when you interview. But ask yourself, why? What am I not doing? And say to yourself, do I need to readjust my goal? Are people not seeing me in that role? Why? Because when they're not, or you would have gotten the job at a certain point. So ask yourself, is maybe that the right role for me? Or do I think it's the right role, and do I feel that that's what that people are telling me that I want? But is there something else that's new and exciting and dynamic within the organization that I would be perfect for? And maybe you need to reassess and reevaluate. So having a little grace within that, I think, especially with the changing environment post-COVID, so many things have changed. So much is going on with patient experience roles, just so many different things that even a few years ago in healthcare weren't even there, or as broad or digital or robotics, things that weren't there years ago are there now. Be on the forefront of that versus maybe going for something you thought you wanted, but if you're not getting there, then maybe there's another path that would even be better.
And I think what's also critically important is to understand the organizational norms in terms of time of period in specific roles. So sometimes people join an organization, all right, in 3 years I want to be a manager. But if the organizational norm is people don't get promoted to management until 10 years, you have a false expectation of yourself in terms of achieving that goal in a short amount of time. So you also have to understand what those norms are within your organization and align your goals with those norms. Of course, we all want to accelerate them, and you have to understand what you have to do to do that, but then also just don't set those unrealistic expectations for yourself. Fair?
That's why it's important to have a network and mentors, because they'll give you that perspective.
Yeah. So I think COVID taught us a lot how to interact digitally, how to show up differently. This wasn't one of the questions that I posed, but I was just thinking through some of the questions that came up. How do you show up confident through a screen, where some people are more dynamic in person? Are there any pet peeves you have as a RBD that you see? Maybe someone's background is cluttered, or are there certain things that just don't align with what your expectations of that interaction should be? I hit a chord, huh?
So it's interesting. So I just immediately thought of this. So I had a district manager opening in New York, Connecticut a couple of months ago. And it was all on Zoom, which was fine. I think that was the right thing to do. And this guy came on who was a Johnson & Johnson employee with no tie, not even a starched shirt. It was a polo shirt. And, he's interviewing. And I'll tell you, I just sat there and I thought, I can't believe you don't have a shirt and tie on. You don't have a jacket on. This is an interview. You're interviewing to be a district sales manager. You're asking me to let you manage 10 people in a district, millions of dollars of business, and this is how you show up in an interview. I know that sounds a little uptight, but I don't think I was wrong, right? Because I think in a specific situation like that, so that was the chord that struck me when you asked that question. As far as putting that aside, because that's a one-off situation, I think when you're on camera, if there's a background that is, like we have a theme right now, goal bold, having that in the background, or blurring out your background or something like that, I think is always appreciated. You don't have to do it, but sometimes I look at people's homes, if they don't blur out the background, I'm like, that is beautiful. I love their furniture and stuff, and you pay attention, but it can be a little distracting. So just kind of think about that. And I think also as well, and I mentioned a moment ago, I'm a mom, I'm a single mom, and many of us in here probably have children, or you have pets, you have that dog barking in the background. It's okay to be sick. My daughters walked into Zoom calls with my team. The other day, we were announcing a new manager who came on board, and she knew the manager. And I said, say, welcome back. She said, welcome back, Miss Marielle. And my whole region knows her, and they've met her before. But I think being human and having, those moments, if a child or a pet or a family member comes in, people like that too. That's what's nice about Zoom, because we've gotten to know people a little bit past just who they are from a business standpoint.
Love that. So this is a great place to pause. We're going to take a 5-minute intermission and come back and close this session out. So 5 minutes and we'll be right back. Drinks and food. Drinks to the left, food to the right.
So
Questions for the panelists. How do you create the proper balance or reciprocity in the folks that you're connected with, so that you feel like you're giving value and getting value in those conversations?
I ask. Usually it depends upon the relationship that you have with the individual. If it's a pure mentorship relationship, a lot of times they are looking to get anything from it. So a lot of times I'll ask, how can I help you? And they're always like, no, this is for you. But I always still ask the question, because I would like to provide value. And if I find opportunities for me to provide value, I will. But also, if I identify areas that I can help somebody out, just in general within my network, I always do it. If I say, this is a great person I think that you should meet, or I know it's a problem and I can connect with the person that can solve it, I always like to pour into all of my relationships, so that when I do need an ask, it's not a big ask, because I've always poured into those relationships. So that's what I do all the time.
I think that's absolutely spot on. I would also say, as you see things, as you're getting to know your mentors and your network, et cetera, if there are different things of interest to them, or, for example, in healthcare, managed care, what biotech, pharma, medtech, anything of interest. If you see an article, there's so many great things, even on LinkedIn, to share something very quickly that another one of your colleagues sent to you in your LinkedIn network. Takes just a moment, as you said a moment ago, and goes a long way. So in addition to what you said, I think sharing things digitally is always helpful too.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times we think about, the value that I can bring to that person. And so Keela's point, sometimes we're like, no, I want to make this about you, which is great. But I think the energy we bring to those interactions is critically important. Far too often, we've all had those mentee conversations, and they're always bringing their baggage, or they're trying to, I don't like my current role. Can you help me get to the next role? And it's almost like they're sucking the energy out of the conference call or the Zoom meeting. And it's like, you need to bring that energy, even though it might be a bad situation. How do you frame it from a perspective of, hey, maybe this is not a great fit. How can we accelerate me out of this current situation, but have a positive spin on that interaction so that you're not draining with that person that's carving out time for you? Because far too often, we're busy from a director level up, you're on conference call back to back to back. And then if you look at that name of that one-on-one, you're like, oh, I know what this is going to be. They're more likely to now cancel that or reschedule you more out. So we just have to figure out what that looks like in terms of bringing that proper energy. So I think that's important. Is there a specific number of people that you should be focusing on and networking with? And what number is too many to manage?
Well, actually, I wanted to make a comment and then I'll answer your question. When you made the comment around, the interaction not being a positive interaction, I think it is important when you have that conversation with them to come in there with questions. This may sound really corny, but I use Google for everything. So if I'm going to have a mentorship relationship or a mentorship meeting or a sponsorship meeting or whatever, I literally Google questions that I can ask, because the conversation can get dry really quickly. You don't really know how to pivot it. Sometimes you don't really have anything to ask, and you can always move the meeting, but it's always, if it's somebody that's very hard to just get on a calendar, I want to always come to that meeting prepared. So I'll literally Google questions to ask and try to make sure that relationship, conversation with them continues to flow while you're there. But also the last thing I wanted to say is just be very respectful of time. Because if I schedule a meeting with you for 30 minutes or an hour, you have my full attention for that 30 minutes or an hour, but it is quite likely that I have back-to-back all day long. But I don't like to end conversations. So if you're that person that's just like to drone on, just be respectful of people's time. Those are just two things I wanted to say. But to answer your question around how big of a network that you should have, as I told you, it's important to know the different people that are in your lives and what the purpose is in your network. I wouldn't say I limit my network, because my network is vast. It's probably hundreds of people that I've interacted with, and I try to foster some type of bond with them. But people that I try my best to make sure that I maintain a relationship with on an ongoing basis, especially people that I look up to, the people that are mentors and sponsors, I probably have a solid 3 to 5 people that I trust when I'm making decisions that are going to provide me the guidance that I need to steer me in the right direction. So I'd say it's probably about 3 to 5 solid people that fit into that category, but it's a vast amount of people that I would say is part of my network that have different roles within it.
And I would agree with that number as well, 3 to 5, absolutely. Just people that you can really be yourself with and who know you and your brand and what you represent and what you're capable of contributing. As far as, going beyond that, you may find that you need to bring in some people from your wider network in based on a new opportunity going forward that may be more closer to what their area of expertise is. So you may, that may ebb and flow a little bit. You may bring somebody in that you normally isn't in that tight group of 3 to 5, but you need that person and you need to foster more of a relationship, because now you've decided to take your career in a different direction and you need their skill set and expertise and guidance to help get you where you want to go.
So I love that, because as you're describing that, I'm thinking visually, there's a circle and an inner circle. So how do you identify the folks that should be in that inner circle, and what qualities do those individuals have?
For me, it's I think it's 2 things. It's probably more vast than 2 things, but 2 words that just came to my mind. The first is people who know me, who know Lisa Houston, who've worked with me, who could speak on my behalf, know my work ethic, know what I can what I can contribute, know what my gaps are, or areas of opportunity, as we say, right? So that to me is really important. I would also say someone that, I can be vulnerable with, all of my network, I'm not necessarily vulnerable with all of them, but one or two, I'm just very I have a very candid conversation. Here's my frustration, or I went for this opportunity and I didn't get it, and I'm frustrated, and this is why, or this is something I'm interested in, but I feel I'm not going to be considered for that because of X, Y, and Z. Having that vulnerable conversation, I think, is really important, because sometimes they'll tell you, you're absolutely right, or they may say, Lisa, you're looking at it so wrong. You need to look at more broadly, and here's everything that you can do. And sometimes that little pep talk, we all need a pep talk, right? And so having people in your network to help get you there, I think, is important.
I'm glad you asked this question, because he sent questions in early, and this is the one I actually thought about the most. So I had made an acronym because I wanted to make sure I remembered it. So I called it DEEP. I'm sorry, I told you I'm corny. So one, I'd say these are things that identify with me. So one is, are they driven? Because I am constantly trying to improve myself, and I want somebody that's focused on that as well, because they're going to provide guidance that aligns with my guidance. One, E, which is empathetic, because they need to see you, they need to see others and be able to relate, because they're not always going to look like you, the people that you're talking with. But if they can have empathy, then they can provide you guidance. A is authentic, as you talked about it. You need to be your authentic self with them. They need to be able to be the authentic self with you, because if you guys have this wall behind you, the feedback that they're giving you is not real. So authenticity is very important. And then P is purpose. They have to have some purpose in their life, because for me, yes, I'm very driven about my career, but I also am very big on giving back into my community. I'm very focused on DE&I, and I want people in my corner that are just focused, not just about doing the job, but also making an impact in this world. So the people that I surround myself are just as purposeful as well. So anyways,
I love that. You could just mic drop on that one. I love that. I love that. So I did want to toss to one attendee, Sabrina. I know you've been taking a lot of notes. We just had a brief conversation, but I want to welcome you into this broader conversation. Just whatever's top of mind for you, question that you may have, or just a comment that you want to share.
Oh, being a newbie in the room, I don't know, but you spoke very clearly to it. It's about where passion meets purpose, right? So we have to be very purposeful about where we're going and really underlying now why. There were so many things that I heard tonight. The first thing was how to get out of your own way. And I think that is realizing who you are to the core of you and what it is that you're really trying to accomplish in life. That part is extremely important. I know personally, my journey has been, my last 5 jobs wasn't something that I went after. It was something that someone brought to me. So I think that that's a gift. And we talk about these national meetings. You want to show up in these national meetings where we're together because you were hired during the pandemic. But let's not forget that when we're in training, when we first join a company and we're on these training meetings, that's key, because you're able to ask questions. You're able to talk about who you are, what you bring to the table. We talk about speaking intelligently. That's very important as well. We don't want to ask a dumb question, especially because somebody mentioned it, it's majority Black people in here. We want to make sure we stand up and we represent for who we are. I want to make sure that everything that I do is impactful. I'm empowering others and that I'm elevating others. So whatever I do, I want to make sure that I am amongst people who are really on my level and able to get to that next level. I heard the comment about when you're at these national meetings as well. It's from the beginning to the end. So recently it was April, the beginning of April, I went to a national meeting and I attended yoga session. It was just me and another person. And the person that was hosting the yoga, I don't do yoga. That's not my thing. But it's a part of networking. Because guess what? Today, my job interview was with that person who was hosting the yoga. So it's those type of connections that you always have to understand is you're always on, and it's not about just networking. It's about promoting yourself. It's about showing who you are, telling your skills, telling where you come from. Like 17, I joined the United States Army. I served my country proudly. I have gone to nursing school. I'm a nurse. I'm an oncology nurse for 17 years. Like, I don't hold back that information because it's critical in my journey that I've taken. People are going to know who I am, and those are the same people who approach me and say, hey, I got this job that you might just qualify for. So I think that it's not just about networking. It's about really being bold, being confident, most importantly, telling people who you are and what you bring to the table. Let's not forget who we are and where we come from. That's really what I kind of have to say.
Now I feel like you need some of that.
That's a mic drop moment too. Boom, boom. I love it. But I mean, so many things, so many pearls there. If for nothing else, the energy and the passion that, we're talking about these topics and being your own champion and speaking confidently about what you can bring to the table. Because now, from 2020 on, it's all these DE&I initiatives, right? And we want to find this diverse talent. And they're now tapping into diverse talent pools. And we now know we're now being sought after, right? So how do you go into that interview and ask for what you want based upon what you're going to be able to bring to the table confidently and negotiate salary, even if you've been within an organization for X amount of years? That's part of your development conversation, seeking out people who have successfully navigated that. So being intentional with what you're looking to do within the roles that you're in. So the last question before we wrap.
Actually, we have to wrap.
Oh, we got to wrap. Okay.
Yes, it's 8:30. I apologize I have to interrupt, but it's 8:30. And we do have a time limit in which we have to wrap up and start putting things together.
Perfect.
And leaving. But I want to say thank you. I hate to be rude.
No, you're
It's
good.
not to be intentionally rude, but I want to say thank you for everything. This was informative. This was a lot of depth and information that we can take home, we can apply today. We will have more of these conversations. And Akila will have you back, and Lisa will have you back. Thank you both, so that you can contribute once again. But I just want to say thank you all. Eric, this was phenomenal, and I want to give a round of applause for all of you.
Great job. Great job.
And we will announce the raffle and what? Yes. Yes. So yes, if we can have Ms. Michael say one word.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Johnson. I don't really know if I need this microphone or not. So, yeah, it's for the internet. Okay, do it for the gram. All right. So, on behalf of Johnson & Johnson, I would first like to just say thank you to Eric, thank you to Akila, thank you to Lisa, and thank you all for showing up. It's a Thursday night. You could have been anywhere in the world. Traffic is horrible from what I hear. Thank you for being here. Thank you for giving us, Johnson & Johnson, the opportunity to share this with you all. So many nuggets tonight, so many things that I've heard. Great panel. So I'm going to give my little spiel. I wasn't sitting at the table. Own your network. Build it like you build your business, deep and wide. Do not limit your network to the company you currently work for, because your next opportunity may be at another organization. Do your due diligence. Do your job, but don't not seek opportunities to connect with someone who could have your next opportunity, your next job at another company. I love Johnson & Johnson. I've been with Johnson & Johnson for 13 years. Great to my family. Keep your options open. And that's my boss there. At least until tomorrow. No, but honestly, thank you all for making the investment in yourself tonight. It's Thursday night football, right? Yes. Most people are watching football. You're making an investment. So thank you for allowing Johnson & Johnson to help build that in yourself. So I'm getting a notice that we need to give the mic. She keeps looking at me. Maybe I should bring the mic here. Oh, I forgot about that. So, Eric, if you don't mind.
No, go.
So, so as a part of the group that is spearheading the relationship between the NSN chapter with Baltimore and Johnson & Johnson, we have developed a QR code. So there's a QR code that you all can have access to that our talent acquisition department actively updates with opportunities specific to our intentional goal of increasing the pipeline of Black and brown talent at Johnson & Johnson. I'll say that again. Johnson & Johnson is a banner sponsor for the NSN network nationally. The talent acquisition department is intentional about making sure that opportunities are available for people that look, sound, and experience corporate America like you and I. Do not take that for granted. Our chairman of the board is a brown person. Eric mentioned DE&I earlier. Johnson & Johnson walks the walk, and we're not just talking it. So if you want opportunity, there's an opportunity right now, thanks to my network and a lot of things that we discussed here tonight. Monday, I'm moving to a new role. My job is open. So all you people leaders, that's the hiring manager.
I'm the hiring manager.
So you can make your connection tonight with Lisa Houston, who will be hiring for my role. So
What is your current role?
So my current role is I am the district manager for the Washington, D.C. district in our neuroscience business with responsibility for our schizophrenia brands in Vegas Ascena, Trenza, and Half Year. I lead a team of 10 individuals that span from New Jersey to Virginia. I live in Pennsylvania. And Monday, I start a new role going back in-house in our neurodegeneration franchise. So 100% because of my network. Control your thing.
And do me a favor, please pick up your plate and your cup and take it right into this trash can so that we can clear everything out and be on our merry way. Because we have to be out of here by 9 o'clock.
Oh, yeah. So then I can say my numbers? Can I say my numbers real quick? The winning numbers, there's 2 of them, $100 off. Conference, okay? That's going to happen in Dallas, August, I think 2nd and 3rd. Don't quote me, but that first week. All right, get them out. Come on. I don't see the tickets. Blue tickets, where you at? Come on. This is money right here. This is money. All right. 940009. No? All right. We have another one. 940023. Come on. Y'all don't have y'all. Okay, Nia, yes. All right, one more. 940014.
Phenomenal job.
Okay, yes. We have a new member in the house, John. Yes, all right. You didn't want
Phenomenal
one.
job.
You did a good job.
Thank you. Absolutely.